26 minutes after the hour as we continue the Big Friday show. Welcome back to Fox News at Night. It is time for the lightning round. And in its search for a new superintendent, a school district in suburban Seattle is inviting parents and guardians to weigh in. However, at least one of the meetings evidently is being segregated along racial lines. Let's bring in our man from the Pacific Northwest, KTTH Seattle talk radio host, Jason Rantz, for the lightning round. Jason, I'm gobsmacked that this is happening in our country. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so this is happening right now in the Issaquah School District. It's not too far from Seattle, and they're basically saying we're going to have these meetings where we're going to open it up to parents. Except, unfortunately, in the search for the superintendent, they've got meetings that are segregated by race. So you've got meetings for anyone who wants to show up, but also then meetings for parents of color, which is just so ludicrous. And they're doing this in the name of equity. So I want everyone to think about that. Segregation in the name of equity. It is 2022, and we have to explain that racial segregation is wrong. The reason why they say they're doing this is that apparently Black and Latino parents will feel uncomfortable around white parents, which is not just condescending and absurd, but it's also racist to assume that these parents are somehow not going to feel comfortable enough to talk about what their needs are with the superintendent. Racism is taught, and we are teaching kids now to separate people by skin color. Can we step back for a moment and say, put your equity nonsense aside and just call this out for what it is? It is immoral.
It's really shocking because even in the best of attempts to do something, I think that's positive, it just doesn't seem to make sense to do something that seems to sort of take you back to the 1950s, separating by racial lines. It's just shocking, quite frankly, anyone outside the Northwest and probably for a lot of people in the Northwest. Meantime, let's shift gears here. I want you to tell me about a hospital circumstance that I think people are talking about a lot up in the Emerald City.
Yeah, so a listener of mine, his name is George. He's 61 years old. His 65-year-old wife had a stroke. She was put in the emergency room at Providence Regional Medical Center in the city of Everett, Washington, and they wouldn't let him visit her because of their COVID rules. Visitation has been nearly completely canceled because they say the case rates in the city are just too high. Now, to be clear about this case, both George and his wife recovered from COVID. They are 3 times vaccinated. There is no reason in the world to keep this couple married for 38 years separated at a time where his wife was going through not just a medical trauma, but the loneliness and fear without your loved one by your side is just a lot. And I got the most heartbreaking email from George talking about how he feels scared and alone, and he's getting angry that this hospital is doing it. And since I've told this story, I've heard from even more people with much more tragic stories about how they're being kept away from their loved ones. And this is not just happening in Washington, it's happening all across the country. It doesn't make any sense, and I hope that these medical professionals realize what it is they're doing, again, all in the name of health. But this is not a position that's based in science, unless they're now telling us masks and vaccines don't work.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's what they're telling us.
Yeah, multiple vaccines on top of that. I just want to share this. This is from the hospital spokesperson to you. I'm going to share this for the folks at home. Visitor restrictions are difficult for patients, their loved ones, and for our caregivers. However, we must prioritize the safety of our patients. That's their take on this, but I think you hit the nail on the head. At some point, there has to be a provision, you would think, for people who are obviously in a circumstance like this. Jason Rantz, as always, a real pleasure to have you with us, my friend. Have a great rest of your weekend.
You as well, Kevin.
Thanks a lot.